paper book today.
That's fine.
I'm trying to see where I have it. I guess I could just get it online.
Let me see. The screenshot I don't think works too well in this thing. But I could try again and see what it does.
I think I can do. I don't remember exactly where we were, but I can probably. Damn it. Online.
I shall find, sure I could find a link to,
For inner peace. Okay, work for students, text. Okay, so we're in chapter 3,
okay,
and oh god, I don't remember what part we're in. Chapter 3. Did we get to part 5? Perception versus knowledge. I think that's where we were. And we had, I think, maybe finished this part, perception versus knowledge.
okay.
We were on section 4, I believe. Well, separation self, mindedness, wrong mindedness.
Where do you want to start at?
I just don't remember exactly where I was.
Ah,
I think
yeah,
we
Sarah.
were on section 5, beyond perception.
Okay.
Okay.
Beyond perception. I've
I have
said that the,
said that
oh,
the
you can go ahead.
abilities you possess are only shadows of your real strength, and that perception, which is inherently judgmental, was introduced only after the separation. No one has been sure of anything since. I also made it clear that the resurrection was the means for the return to knowledge, which was accomplished by the union of my will with the Father's. We can now establish a distinction that will clarify some of our subsequent statements. Okay.
What do you think?
I'm not really sure about what this is saying.
I've said that the abilities you possess only shadows of your real strength, and
Can
that
you hear me?
perception, what is inherently judgmental, was introduced only after the separation. So the real strength
Can
that
you
we
hear
have.
me?
Yeah, oh yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
What happened?
Mm, I don't think I noticed
Okay,
anything.
just a minute.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah, you sound fine. I didn't notice anything.
I stopped hearing you then. Um,
Oh, so I was talking
uh,
and it cut out?
I just couldn't hear you.
Okay, let me turn on push to talk and maybe that'll help one moment here.
Oh, it was on my end.
Oh, okay.
Now I can hear it.
Okay. So,
I'm just not sure what they're talking about here.
right. So basically, there's only one ability, really, one real ability, and the course refers to it as extension. So in heaven, even though it's not
Hello?
anything we can really understand. Oh, I pressed push to talk, so I forgot I pressed push to talk. I must have clicked it without realizing. Hold on, let me take push to talk off. Yeah, I said that it was fixed for you, but I already clicked it. Hold up, there we go. I took myself off push to talk. So basically, I just read that verse again, so you know what the verse says. So basically, in heaven, the uh, the only ability we have, I guess technically the only ability that really exists, the only ability that has any meaning, is what the course calls extension. So basically, it says in heaven, and this is more like not like an analogy because in oneness, there's really, I mean, we can't really fully understand what oneness is, but it basically says that in heaven, God extends himself as Christ. So God extends himself, and that extension is Christ. And then Christ
Oh yeah.
extends himself and becomes, and that's creations with an S. So there's, if I was to write it out in the chat, so the same chat that you were looking at earlier, I'll write there if I can find it. Let's see here. There it is. So it says that God extends Christ, and then Christ extends heaven. Not heaven, but creations, I meant to say. And that's what's going on in heaven. So basically that's the only ability that really exists. So anything else is really just absolutely illusory. So that's really our only strength. Um,
Which one?
it's really extension. That's pretty much it. And even that's just an analogy. I mean, really, it's just a
What is
oneness that's just.
extension?
Say again.
What's extension?
I mean, it's really no real way to define it. You could just say that that's the only activity that's real. You could just say that there is just oneness being aware of itself. I guess you can say in a sense. I mean, there's really no way to really define it, but it's just in the course. That's an analogy that it uses, like how a father gives birth to a son and a son gives birth to a grandson. God extends himself as Christ, and Christ extends himself as creations. But it's more like an analogy just to describe oneness in a way that to describe something that's not dualistic in a dualistic way. But suffice it to say, our real strength is that we're one with God. So similar to what we read last week in Disappearance of the Universe, where it talked about how our real strength is our total dependence on God. So this is basically hearkening to that. Like our real strength is just the fact that we're ultimately one with God, not as an individual self or as a mind, but as a oneness joined in one. The only thing that's real. And perception is inherently judgmental. I mean, ultimately because perception is interpretation. But even with perception itself, we have to judge. Like when you look at the words on the page, you have to choose to give a particular meaning to the letters relative to the empty spaces between the letters. I mean, it's possible to focus on the page and just focus on only the white area in between the words, but that doesn't really give you any meaning. So, in order to perceive, we have to judge what's valuable and what's not valuable in our perception. Like when you're speaking to somebody in a loud room, you have to focus on what the person's saying and tune out all the other noise. So, in that sense, it's really inherent in perception that we have to judge what's valuable and what's not valuable. And of course, that's introduced only after separation, because before the separation, there's only oneness. And of course, there is only oneness now. But in this illusion of separation, this is the realm within which we can perceive because we have to have something to perceive and something to perceive with. So that's why perception is only introduced into that. So the reason why we're not sure is because the world was made for there to be lack of certainty. So only God is certain. In the world, that I mean, is everything has changed. Like, when you wake up tomorrow, you don't know if you're going to get a cold or if you're going to get in a car wreck, or maybe a loved one is going to die, or I mean, you never know. I mean, that's the way
Yeah.
it's designed. So you know, on the person talk about how I think around the 1980s there was a situation where one of the defense systems mistook some like clouds or some ducks or something as missiles, and there was almost a nuclear war launched because one of the sides thought that they were being attacked. I think it was Russia thought they was being attacked, but the guy who was in charge that day decided to not follow procedure and just launch all the missiles, and we could sit here and talk about A Course in Miracles because we didn't all get blown up with uh, you know nuclear bombs or living in some kind of nuclear wasteland. So that just goes to show that there's so many things going on that we're not aware of that could be that is affecting us or could be affecting us. So it's designed not to be certain. That's the way it's set up. So you could always have something to project our fear onto. So um,
Okay.
I made it clear that the resurrection was the means for the return to knowledge, which was accomplished by the union of my will with the Father's. We can now establish a distinction that will clarify some of our subsequent statements. And of course, whenever the Course is talking about uniting with the will of the Father or uniting with God, we could think of that as really being symbolic of aligning with the right mind of the Holy Spirit, because nothing at this level could interact with anything that's real. Like illusion and reality don't mix at all. So since we're streaming, it
Yeah.
might help to share the image, since maybe there's some folks who watch later who may not be familiar with it. So let me load the image real fast, and we'll discuss it briefly.
Okay.
So I'll share screen. And the share screen earlier when I was testing it out, it didn't work too well. So let's see how it works now. Are you able to see that? Seems to be working out now.
Let me see. I can see a share screen.
Good. And it should have the image up in there,
Yes.
right? So basically, and you should still be able to see it. So everything above that line has something to do with the illusion, and everything above the horizontal line. So whenever I talk about the horizontal line, that line there is the line I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
basically, at this level, the highest, I guess you could say, level, as you reuse the word, the highest level we can contact or touch is this blue dot. So this blue dot is essentially what we are ultimately. That's basically the universal mind. Um, and as a universal mind, we could either choose the ego, the wrong mind over here, or we can choose the right mind. So,
Yeah.
and you notice it says memory of God. So basically, since the Holy Spirit is, quote, the memory of God, when we align with that memory, the experience is like we're aligning with God. Thus, we can have an experience like the Course calls revelation, where you have that temporary freedom from fear and freedom from time, or however you want to describe it, freedom from separation, which is basically aligning with the symbol of what's above that horizontal line. So going back to the verse, he says, uh, it also made it clear that the resurrection was the means for the return to knowledge, which was accomplished by the union of my will with the Father's, because he forgave completely and thus had no more guilt. So his only mind was the right mind of the Holy Spirit. And all right, we're in the text
Okay.
3:5:1. So and now basically the last sentence is just basically referring to what he's going to say in the next part. I'll go ahead and read the next
Okay.
paragraph. Oh, you had a
Okay.
question about that?
No.
In the next paragraph, he says, since the separation, there we go. Hold up, just scrolled a bit more than that. There we go. Since the separation, the words create and make have become confused. When you make something, you do so out of specific sense of lack or need. Anything made for a specific purpose has no true generalizability. When you make something to fill a perceived lack, you are tacitly implying that you believe in separation. The ego has invented many ingenious thought systems for this purpose. None of them is creative. Inventiveness is wasted effort, even in its most ingenious form. The highly specific nature of invention is not worthy of the abstract creativity of God's creations. Thoughts?
I think we were talking about that before.
It's the main thing
Well, I
that
have to
comes to
do.
mind to point out about this verse, which is common to be misunderstood. It says, when you make something, you do so out of specific sense of lack. Anything made for a specific purpose has no true generalizability. When you make something to fill a perceived lack, you are tacitly implying that you believe in separation. This in no way means that we should not make things out of our specific sense of lack, like, for instance, making dinner later. So it must be understood that the course is ultimately applied at the level of the mind. I mean, we can find real world applications, and that's fine. But ultimately, the course is directed to the level of the mind. So the idea is that even as we go about, making us some food to eat, because obviously when we make some food, that's to fill a perceived lack. We're hungry. Our body's lacking nutrients. So we make some food and we eat it, and then we feel better. So, what this is saying is, when you make something to fulfill a perceived lack, you're implying you believe in separation. That does not mean that we should feel guilty about eating. What people often want to do is jump straight to, don't buy that, car that you want, or don't make dessert because you don't really need dessert, just silly things. Ultimately, the way we apply this is when all we have to do is apply to the bad stuff. That's where it starts. Ultimately, it does
Okay.
apply to the good stuff because everything is equally illusory. But what people often want to do is try to apply it to the good stuff, and because they don't want to look at the bad stuff. So what we do is apply it to the bad stuff first. So when uh when we go to make our dinner and we find out, our stove is broken, and we really wanted to eat whatever we were making, that's when we can apply forgiveness. And when we go to the restaurant to get something to eat because our stove was broken, we could apply our forgiveness, and even though we can't have exactly what we want. So the idea is not to feel guilty about uh, wanting what we want and filling our perceived lack, because if we didn't believe in separation, we wouldn't appear to be here. So the course knows. So basically, this is another way of inserting. We read that verse several times already about the compromise approach. So, and this also goes to what I was saying last week about how we always have to take the course in total. So when a verse talks about, uh, you know, God making a plan for us, we can't, throughout everything else we learn, to think, okay, yeah, so above that line does interact here. We got to think, okay, that must be symbolic, because we know the course says the world isn't real, and what is not real doesn't exist at all. So what's real can interact with the world. But we could put that in context. So the same thing here, we have to keep in mind that verse that says compromise approach. The verse that says we're not wholly insane, we're still somewhat insane, so we still need our illusions because that's where we're at. But it just, whenever it gets to the point to where the pain is there and the world is not working for us, thoughts like this can help us to say, hey, this is this thing that I want so much that I can't have for whatever reason. This is a symbol of my belief in lack. This thing that I want that I can't have, that I want to have, but I can't have, not that I'm choosing not to have because I'm so spiritual. And the Course is saying I'm reinforcing separation. No, this thing that I want to have that I can't get, or this thing that I got but is still not making me happy. Now I can apply this verse and say, hey, this is actually a symbol. This lack I'm experiencing because I can't get what I want, or this lack that I'm experiencing in spite of getting what I want. This lack is really symbolic of my belief in separation, going back to this line. I believe in separation. I chose the ego, and that's the origin of my experience of lack. And what's going on here at the level of the world, this is the symbol of that. This is the representation of that choice. So since the world is in
Yeah.
effect, I can make a choice again for the Holy Spirit. I can choose peace, and then I can let go of this experience of lack at the same time. So this is how we would apply that.
Okay.
Anything more
Yeah.
on that paragraph?
No, that's all. So number 3, should I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Knowing, as we have already observed, does not lead to doing. The confusion between your real creation and what you have made of yourself is so profound that it is literally impossible for you to know anything. Knowledge is always stable, and it is quite evident that you are not. Nevertheless, you are perfectly stable as God created you. In this sense, when your behavior is unstable, you are disagreeing with God's idea of your creation. You can do this if you choose, but you would hardly want to do it if you were in your right mind. What do they mean by behavior is unstable? By believing in the illusion?
Well, you can sort of think of um, the Course has a unique idea about that because the Course says that what we do comes from what we think. So if our behavior is unstable, then our thinking is unstable. So in that sense, you can say our thinking is unstable when we choose the ego. So the ego is itself in an unstable position because it is a position that says illusion is real. And when we choose the ego, our behavior becomes a reflection of that. You know, when we choose the ego, we become angry at one moment, and then we become happy at another moment. And when I say happy, happy because we get what we want, or happy because the person we like, the person we dislike, got something bad happened to them. We get what we want, we happy. We don't get what we want, we are sad. Um, um, somebody does what we want, we're happy. And our behavior reflects that. Somebody doesn't do what we don't want, we're angry and we give them the cold shoulder, right? The person does what we want and we're happy and we all lovey-dovey with them. So our behavior follows our thought, and we can see our behavior shifting back and forth between different uh,
Okay.
uh, you know, modes of behavior because our thinking is that way. But what the Course is saying is that
Okay.
when we choose the Holy Spirit, our behavior becomes consistent. But this is why I say that the Course speaks about this in a unique way, because when your behavior becomes consistent because you choose the Holy Spirit, that can look many different kinds of ways, you know. But every single thing will still be an expression of the same right mind, of the same right mind. So as a reflection of the fact that heaven is stable. Because again, in heaven there's only oneness. There's nothing distinct enough to be aware of something that's not itself, the Course says. So literally there's no separation, there's no distinction, there's no change. It's eternal and changeless. So that's why it's absolutely stable, because there is nothing to change. There's only oneness. There is nothing to change between. There's nothing distinct enough to even discern a change. So the reflection of that in the world is having a mind perfectly at peace. So when we forgive completely, there's only peace. There's no anger, there's no judgment, there's no happiness and no sadness in the sense that I'm happy because I got something and I'm sad because I didn't. There's only a joy or a happiness that's constant because it's based upon alignment with the right mind. So in that
Yes.
sense, our behavior becomes stable because our thoughts are perfectly stable in oneness. And that's why it says, nevertheless, you are perfectly stable as God created you. Because again, in heaven, there's only oneness. There's this absolute stability because there's nothing to be unstable with or between. In this sense, your behavior is unstable. When your behavior is unstable, you are disagreeing with God's idea of your creation, which means that we're aligning with the ego, which says that separation is real, instability is real, which is why when we align with the right mind, we become stable in the sense that the right mind, as we saw in the image earlier, is the memory of God. So when we align with the memory of God, we align with the memory of ourselves as God created us, thus our thinking becomes stable and thus our behavior becomes stable, which means, again, it's simply acting out from unconditional love at every single moment, right? We may still be doing all kind of various things, but it'll always be based on that stable thought of peace, of the peace of God.
Yeah. Okay.
Any more on that one?
Well, yeah, I got that.
I'll read the next one. The fundamental
Okay.
question you continually ask yourself, you cannot properly be directed. The fundamental question you continually ask yourself cannot properly be directed to yourself at all. You keep asking what it is you are. This implies that the answer is not only one you know, but is also one that is up to you to supply, that you cannot perceive yourself correctly. You have no image to be perceived. The word image is always perception related and not a part of knowledge. Images are symbolic and stand for something else. The idea of changing your image recognizes the power of perception, but also implies that there is nothing stable to know.
Yeah, I think I'll need a little bit of a summary on that one too.
Right? What I'll do is pull up another verse that may help it. Let me see if I can remember it. Well, I don't actually want to. I was thinking about something from the workbook. I don't. I don't actually want to go to the workbook. I'll just stay in the text. Let me just try to. Let me think about a different verse. Um, why don't we? Let's go to chapter 18, section 2 and 5. So I'll type it in the chat. That's text 18, 2, and 5. And let me know when you have it.
I have no idea how to get to the index, and now I'm totally lost.
That's okay. Just scroll back where you were, and now I'll share my screen of it. Let me configure it so it shows properly on the screen, and I'll share my screen, and you can just stay on the original verse.
Okay.
There you go. It's like it's showing properly, at least properly enough. and I'll highlight it, the whole paragraph, so you can see this clearest paragraph I'm talking about. So here we go. Right? Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Right? So text 18, 2, and 5. It said, dreams show you that you have the power to make a world as you would have it be, and that because you want it, you see it. So right now it's talking about the dreams that we have at night. Like and I always like to mention, because I talk about out of body experiences sometimes. It's not talking about you go to sleep and you have an out of body experience that you're unconscious of, but you really is not really a dream. I mean, just like a big dream, like you're in the elevator is an example I like to use. And you have to go up a bunch of flights of stairs and you're mind wandering, you're just imagining something in your mind like you're in Hawaii or something, but you're still in the elevator, right? So it says dreams show you have the power to make a world as you would have it be. And because you want it, you see it, like the dreams we have at night. They're there. It's like the dream of Hawaii in the elevator, because that's what we're thinking about. We want to see Hawaii. And while you see it, you
Yeah.
do not doubt that it is real, which means that literally in our dreams at night, when we having a dream, we can't tell. We think we're really there being chased by this big green monster or whatever. Yet here's a
Yeah.
world clearly within your mind that seems to be outside. You do not respond to it as though you made it, nor do you realize that the emotions the dream produces must come from you. It is the figures in the dream and what they do that seem to make the dream. Now, so what this is referring to, those last few sentences, when we're dreaming at night, it's a regular hallucination dream. Everything we're seeing, we're putting it there. So one of the analogies Kenny Lapnick uses a lot, he says, you wouldn't, like, if you have a dream that somebody was mean to you, you wouldn't wake up in the morning and be angry at them and demand they apologize. The person would rightfully say, I mean, it was your dream. I wasn't in your head last night having that dream for you. You dreamt that, right? You do not realize you are making them act out for you. For if you did, and I'm at this part right here, you do not realize you are making them act out for you. For if you did, the guilt would not be theirs, and the illusion of satisfaction would be gone. In dreams, these features are not obscure. You seem to waken, and the dream is gone. So, in other words, in dreams, when we wake up, we know we were just dreaming. So it's not obscure. When we have a dream at night or hallucination in the elevator, we know we're dreaming. We know I was just hallucinating, right? We know that everything that happened, I hallucinated that. I did that. So that's why he's saying in dreams, those features are not obscure. We know what happened. You awaken, you seem to awaken, and the dream is gone. So you notice he says you seem to awaken. We don't really awaken. Yet, what you fail to recognize is what caused the dream has not gone with it. And what caused the dream is what he said in the first sentence here. What caused the dream is you want it, right? Dreams show you that you have the power to make the world you would have it be, as you would have it be, and that because you want it, you see it. So what was not gone is our wish to make another world that is real. That's what it's referring to. Those two verses are connected. Your wish to make another world that is not real remains with you. And what you seem to waken to is but another form of this same world you see in dreams. All your time is spent in dreaming. Okay? Your waking and your sleeping dreams have different forms, that is all. Your content is the same. So he's literally saying, even now, when we seem to be awake, right now we're dreaming. We're having a dream that the separation from God is real. So going back to that verse we were reading before in chapter 3, he says, and I changed the size of my screen. I think the verse moved a bit over here. Where we at? We're in 4. He says, this implies that the answer is not only one you know, but is also one that is up to you to supply what we are. Yet you cannot perceive yourself correctly. You have no image to be perceived. So he's referring to the fact that the self that we think we are, this image that we're seeing when we look in the mirror, is illusory. It's a dream. It's not what we are. What we really are is that one with God above that line. All of this is a dream, which is why, again, nothing here can interact with anything above the line because everything here is illusory, as we just read. We seem to
Yeah.
awaken, but we're still dreaming. So when we think of ourselves as an individual and we want to try to identify what we are, we're always going to get it wrong because the self that's thinking that is part of the dream, is part of the illusion. What we are is totally outside of the dream, right? So that's what that's talking about here. Images are symbolic and stand for something else. So the next to last verse in that part, images are symbolic, and as we read a moment ago, this whole world is an image, is a dream, is illusory. So everything in this world is symbolic, means it stands for something else, which is what we were talking about earlier. You know, when we don't get what we want and we experience lack, we think that we're lacking because we didn't get what we want. But that entire scenario is a symbol of our choice for the ego, because everything in the world stands for something else because it's illusory, is a dream that's projected as an image to reflect the choice for the ego. This is what this is talking about. So the idea of changing your image recognizes the power of perception, but also implies that there is nothing stable to know because, again, this is all illusory. This is a dream. So this is a very, um, I mean, ultimately it's clear. I can remember when it was not clear, right? So I understand that this verse does not seem clear, right? But what it's talking about is the fact that this world is illusory. Everything we can perceive and think of, including ourselves, is illusory. Thus, we can never know ourselves as an individual. We can only know ourselves when we let go of the dream. And our reality is totally above that line when we're looking at the image, right? So that's why people always get it wrong when you think that you can get to heaven. Nobody gets to heaven because the you is not real. It's an image. It's an image, but there is no image that can be perceived because it's all illusory, as we read earlier in chapter 18.
Discouraging.
Say again?
Isn't that a little bit discouraging?
No, I mean it's discouraging when it's discouraging to the extent that you identify with the ego, right? Which means that for most of us, it's discouraging most of the time because we don't want to let go of the self that we think is real. But the more you start to identify with the Holy Spirit, the more it becomes encouraging because more and more we start to recognize that there's no hope in this world, right? As the Course says, and how I remember Kenneth Wapnick putting it one time, there's no hope here. We're never going to be happy here. No matter what happens, we will not be happy. We get what we want, we're not happy. We don't get what we want, which is most of the time for most of us, we're not happy. And then we die, right? And then we come back again to not be happy, right? And to not be happy again and again and again. And it's an endless cycle for millennia of suffering, right? So to the extent that we still have hope the world is going to offer us something, well, to that extent is disappointing. Oh my gosh, this is illusory. And I wanted that car. You're telling me that car is illusory? I wanted that car. That car is going to, when I get that car, that's going to get me to the promised land. That car, when I get it, then I'm going to really be happy. Once I get the money and get the credit, and when I get that car, that's going to be it. But you're telling me that car is not valuable. So that's what it is that makes it discouraging because there's still things in the
You
world we
know,
want. Go ahead.
I'm actually lucky because I grew up in Humboldt County with the Back to the Landers, and we had an illegal plant at our disposition. People grew a lot and, made a lot of money. But for the most part, that was just a really good way to get your neighbors in trouble and get a bunch of people, including yourself, thrown in jail.
And you say they were
So
doing what?
the lemma, what was that?
You said they were doing what?
Growing marijuana.
Oh,
We're
growing
the
marijuana. I got you.
capital of marijuana for the last 50 years.
Okay.
And now it's legal, and the big fucking greedy fuckers are basically trying to take everything over because I think it's because they're threatened by us, because we're independent. We believe in love and forgiveness, and we believe in cooperation and living in harmony and helping each other out, which it's actually, there's still quite a bit of human strife, but it's way closer to living in heaven on earth than anything else I've seen. I mean, at least today. So like these guys got like basically threatened by us because we're the descendants of the people who fought against the Vietnam War. And we're like, fuck this. We're not into murdering other people. We want to be kind and loving, make peace. And so they came up here and started growing vegetables, and and they grew a little bit of marijuana on the side. So, but the main idea wasn't to become rich. It was just to grow enough to be able to support the local free radio, to support the alternative schools, buy a 120-acre farm so that we can have a community park for people to walk, because we're a little nobody town that's not even incorporated. And so we kind of got to do everything for ourselves. And I got to experience that when people vibrate and take actions on a level that's more love and forgiveness and working together, like the typical way of making agreements in community here was consensus or consensus -1. And it takes a lot of patience and a lot of conversation to do that. And sure, there's still a lot of trouble, but like we managed to be happy as a community in spite of the fact that we had the largest domestic military movement since the Civil War in our place pretty much every year. Campaign against marijuana planting. So that's not in heaven, and it's still here in the illusion. But to me, that's enough to show me that it works. It's real.
And good for you. If you was able to, if you're able to find heaven on earth, good for you. Then
I mean,
then enjoy that. Uh,
it's definitely still a challenge, but like I can see that when people work together and when we have that mindset of like working on yourself and well, some people would pray to the land. We didn't necessarily pray to like oneness or something, but there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people up here who've done the Course in Miracles, and it's not like real illumination, but on like a community level, it's better than other places.
good for you. Well, I'll say for the rest of us then, who are unable to
No, I'm
experience
not an
heaven on earth,
exception.
huh?
I'm just lucky. I'm
Good.
not an exception. I'm just lucky because I've gotten to see what humans are capable of when we vibrate with love.
Good. Well, good for you. I'll just say for those who are unable to find that piece of heaven on earth, and that's where uh, uh, idea of recognizing that there is no joy in the world uh, becomes more and more encouraging. That the world is not real. That the world does not hold the value that we seek. Because I would say that that's not to say that people should feel bad. Like if you're able to make heaven on earth, well, good for you. There's nothing wrong with if anybody found their heaven on earth in whatever way. But those of us or anybody who are unable to, that's what those verses are for, or who are directed to, so that when we get to the point that we lose hope in the world as being that heaven for us, we become less and less invested in seeing ourselves, that's the image, and more invested in aligning ourselves with the right mind, and then awakening to where our self really is. But if there's nothing wrong with finding, you be able to find heaven on earth by whatever means, go ahead and do your thing.
Yeah. You think we have time for verse 5?
Yeah. We have time
Okay.
for more. Started a bit late with the audio issues, so let's go ahead
Yeah.
and I don't remember who's. I guess you can go ahead and read the next one.
Okay, I'll read it. Knowing is not open to interpretation. You may try to interpret meaning, but this is always open to error because it refers to the perception of meaning. Such incongruities are the result of attempts to regard yourself as separated and unseparated at the same time. It is impossible to make up so fundamental a confusion without increasing your overall confusion still further. Your mind may have become very ingenious, but as always happens when method and content are separated, it is utilized in a futile attempt to escape from an inescapable impasse. Ingenuity is totally divorced from knowledge because knowledge does not require ingenuity. Ingenious thinking is not the truth that shall set you free, but you are free of the need to engage in it when you are willing to let it go. What do you think that is? That's
So this brings to
I
mind
don't know.
the.
I'm just not very good at understanding these things yet, but I'll get there hopefully eventually if I keep it up.
Mhm. This brings to mind. There's a verse that talks about upside down thinking. Uh, Let me see if I can find that verse real fast, and we'll close on that one.
Upside down thinking.
Upside down orientation. And actually, it's something that we read
Okay.
before. I'll put the verse in the, but you don't have to go to it. I'll share my screen, but I'll still put the verse in the text.
Okay.
So let me see if I can share my screen here. And it should be live now, right? So we're in this part right here, 1, 5,
Okay.
and 6. It says, the miracle is a sign that the mind has chosen to be led by me in Christ's service. The abundance of Christ is the natural result of choosing to follow him, which is the right mind. All shallow roots must be uprooted because they are not deep enough to sustain you. The illusion that shallow roots can be deepened and thus made to whole is one of the distortions on which the reverse of the golden rule rests. As these false underpinnings are given up, the equilibrium is temporarily experienced as unstable. However, nothing is less stable than an upside down orientation, nor can anything that holds it upside down be conducive to increased stability. Oh, and I didn't realize when I click the thing, it's not sharing it. Like you can see the verse, but the people but they got the text anyway, so they're good. So going back to the verse that we read, it's talking about. So here it's talking about the abundance of Christ versus the abundance of the ego. Basically stability versus an upside down orientation, right? The ego versus the Holy Spirit. So keeping that verse in mind, we go back into the verse paragraph 5, knowing is not open to interpretation. You may try to interpret meaning, but this is always open to error because it refers to the perception of meaning, and such incongruities are the result of attempting to regard yourself as separated and separated at the same time. So, in other words, there's a part of us, like Kenny Rapley once said, one of us has the foot on the gas and one of us has the foot on the brakes. Right. So on the one hand, we don't want the pain that comes with separation. Right. We want to get rid of the pain. We want to have peace and wholeness. But at the same time, we don't want to lose our individuality. Right. So ironically, we try to find our place in heaven in illusion and try to, in a sense, be separated and unseparated at the same time. We try to find the peace
There
of
we go.
God in the realm of separation. Right?
Sad.
Say again.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
know what happened.
I went out. I cut out. Are you able to hear me?
I had you in my headphones.
Well, I got still recap it in brief. So basically, the idea is just ultimately the idea is that in the end we have to choose between the ego and the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's the ultimate uh, idea. I'm trying to find the perfect word, the ultimate in a nutshell. That's what it basically is. So we can try to regard ourselves as separated and unseparated at the same time. We can try to make the world real and believe that we can really be happy here. But in the end, we'll find that uh, there's no correlation between an upside down and a right upright perception. They're two totally different things. So it says your mind may have become very ingenious, but it always happens when method and content are separated. It is utilized in a futile attempt to escape from an inescapable impasse. So one of the interesting thing is the course, even though it's written on a high intellectual level, the foundational ideas or principles of the course, indeed the practice of the course itself, in essence, has nothing to do with the intellect. It has only to do with the mind, and you could say intellect projects the mind, um, or I guess you could say the mind projects intellect. I meant to say, like the mind projects intellect. Intellect is as much of the illusion as everything else. So basically, what the ego tries to do is it tries to insert itself into the process and tries to teach us that we can hold on to the ego and still have heaven at the same time. And this is simply basically letting us know that in the end, that's not going to work. This does not mean that we need to stop trying to do that or give it away, because again, we have the compromise approach. We're not going to give up anything until we're ready to anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's all illusory. So Jesus or the Holy Spirit is not over there, pointing his finger at us saying, when are you going to choose me 100%? Um, but verses like this are not meant to uh, chastise us for wanting to, as it says, be separated and unseparated at the same time. It's simply pointing out the fact that eventually we'll get to a point to where we all get to a point, like the course says, where we say there must be another way. Eventually we get to a point where we realize that what we're doing is not working, and verses like this will come to mind, and we will start to recognize that we need to be fully committed to the right mind. So in the practical sense, fully committed to forgiveness. We'll start to look at the judgments that we hold on to, thinking I can still be happy while holding on to this judgment of this one particular person, for instance. That one person that did that one thing that everybody agrees, we're not going to forgive that person. How can we possibly forgive that? That person is so evil. And again, it's not to say that we can't acknowledge, like I mentioned before, that if somebody does a crime, they're a criminal. We call the police and get them arrested and press charges and whatever we have to do at the level of the world. But it doesn't change the fact that at the level of the mind, we're all the same and everyone is innocent because nothing in the world is real because it's completely illusory. So we start to learn to look at the world from that perspective, even as we go about our everyday lives and still respond to things in the normal way. So in that sense, when we become fully invested in the right mind, that is, in a sense, our choice to be fully unseparated. Because again, the Holy Spirit, as we saw in the image earlier, is the memory of God. So when we choose that memory 100%, we're choosing to become unseparated. We're choosing to align with oneness again. And we choose to let go of judgment. And that sense of going back and forth between the two will go away. But in a sense, right now, our life is one of going back and forth and trying to hold on to both, and that's fine. It doesn't make us guilty, but in the end, it's just going to just make us still experience pain. And in the end, we're not going to want that pain anymore. We're going to choose to let it go because it just hurts. So
Yeah. Okay.
that's a good place to stop. And
Yeah, it is.
and this is our recorded week. So when you go to the YouTube site, it'll be on there for review. And anybody who's watching an hour later, just join the Discord. You can join the group at any time. And then you will be here every Sunday at 2 o'clock or at 8:30 Central Time. You can join for one or both. And for those who join for the weekly sessions, I'll see you next week. And for those
All
who
right.
only join for the monthly stream, I guess I'll see y'all next time.
Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome.